Hello, you grotesque ghouls and goblins. I'm here to talk to you today about world building and just two pieces of advice that I have come across and really helped me in my own world building, one of which I kind of developed on my own. Maybe a lot of people out there already do it, but it's just something I kind of started naturally doing, and I want to take and give to you as something to try. And the other thing's more just a pet peeve that I want to grind about and encourage you all, if you're writing, to really take it and be sure to do it, because if you don't, it's going to bother the hell out of me, and maybe a lot of other readers too, but mainly do it for me. But before we get into that, I do want to say tomorrow I am dropping maybe the video I have worked the hardest on in the last 6 months for the channel, so if you wouldn't mind paying extra close attention, tomorrow at 9 a.m. drops a piece that I have had in my head for ages, and I finally got it out. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's the best I can manage, and I'm really excited to see a reaction. If that video does well, it'd mean a lot to me. But before we get any further in this, a quick word from today's sponsor. And this video is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is the online learning... What? How did you say it? Community! That's right, it's a community online where you can better yourself as an individual while staying productive in these rather not productive times. We're all being forced to stay inside. Well, guess what? Doesn't mean you have to stop learning. Reduce your anxiety, reduce the pressure of the world by continuing to better yourself through an online platform that costs less than most subscription services a month. That's right, instead of watching The Office for the 17th time, I know, Sarah, you can go on Skillshare and try Phil's meditation challenge. Sounds a little antithetical, but hey, who knows? Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. I recommend you give it a go. I'm gonna be honest, I'm cooped up a lot of the time now because I'm not going out because the world's, the world right now. So instead, doing something like Skillshare allows you to feel like you're still being productive, improving yourself while not just working nonstop. That's the beauty of this platform especially. And hey, if you use that link right down there, you start with a free trial and you can cancel before they even charge you. Not that, they maybe want me to say that, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Have a good one, y'all, and back to the video. Now, all right, so world building. This is a very tricky part of the writing fantasy process, right? It's really easy to get stuck in one mindset with world building and just start sitting above your creation like an omnipotent god and just throw features in left and right and not really think about how they mix and blend. And this is actually what I'm going to hit on first, and I really want to drive this home because this is a problem I see from even successful authors, and I'll see their readers even mention this disconnect that happens even if they enjoy their books. And I'll bring up an extreme example of this just to really drive my point home. What I'm going to encourage you to do is essentially rebuild your entire world through multiple drafts, and on each draft, take on a different angle for the world building. I've been actually doing this through writing short stories and then taking those short stories and writing them on my Patreon, but it's been a phenomenal exercise to add a lot of depth to my world as a whole. So I'm going to give you an example of this. When you first start building your world, it's very easy to just sit above it, as I said, and start throwing all these things together and not think about the nuances in between. And then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to start writing your narrative, and as you do so, your characters can kind of just operate in this bubble where the only features of the world that really come to life are the ones they directly encounter or from their perspective and affect them. This causes a disconnect later on, especially if this is a series we're living in for long stretches of time, and it can cause just this hollow feeling where everyone around your characters is essentially operating like these shells of dialogue. They just deliver it to the characters you're writing from, and then they disappear. Their lives do not matter outside of that. So how do you avoid this? How do you add the details and the nuance to give every bit of life, every culture, every angle, every class within what you're constructing depth? Well, this is actually where those short stories come into play. Take a short story and write it from a perspective of someone within your world who is completely different from your main crew. If your crew is just a bunch of rogues out in the woods, write it from a noble's perspective. If they are from high society, write it in a local craftsman who maybe his business is struggling. Maybe a trader, a banker, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be even a compelling narrative. The purpose of it has to be allow you, the writer, to see what you're creating from another perspective, a perspective you wouldn't naturally put yourself in. Then take extra effort to think about the day in the life, the ramifications of the society and the features you've built around them from this person who you initially had no interest in. This can give you new angles and insights into how your world is coming together that you can then lift out of this short story and take bits of nuggets and weave it into your main cast crew narrative. What's going to happen now is your reader can pick up on, from the perspective of the characters you're writing's angles, these nuggets that you tactfully weave in. in. So let's say you're writing from the idea of a banker, and a banker in this world for some reason has an extremely clean and neat office. You, when you write this short story, know exactly why. It's a tradition or something among the clan or Mason type guild for the bankers, and that's why it exists there. But for your crew, when they come in, all they know is that it's a really clean, interesting thing. Maybe scatter a couple symbols around, make it clear that there is a wider purpose for a lot of the stuff you're building. You, as the author, know the depth of why these things exist. The reader will pick up on them and speculate and go, I guarantee you, well and far beyond what you actually created. It's this beautiful iceberg effect that happens as an author, where you can drop tiny nuggets and readers love to go with it. And so if you add these nuggets everywhere, it can feel like your world has tremendous amounts more depth than even if you did this exercise you actually provided. I totally endorse tricking and fooling your readers because, believe it or not, most authors do it. There is not the level of depth when they had their books first come out. A lot of people project onto them, and a lot of authors just kind of after the fact go, oh, this is a success? Let's go in and fill this all out, and they'll actually realize these things more and more in sequels. And this also just adds for the characters you'll be running into for the day and day a level of purpose for things that are existing in the world that are not there for your party. Like, oh, a very clean office. That has nothing to do with the crew that you're bringing into it. It's a feature of the work environment for this character who is not relevant to the story. I know that seems like it's mildly distracting, but it's not. Instead, it just is a feature of world building that actually really lends to the overall construct. It's not like you're taking paragraphs to go to the side to elaborate on some great thing. I highly encourage you not to do that. It's a thing your characters are noticing, which brings the world closer to the narrative and allows it to feel like it's alive. Okay. That's great and dandy. It's a piece of advice I recommend. Just write these 5,000 word short stories from perspectives you wouldn't otherwise inhabit for your book, and you can take a lot away. It'll bring the connections between these different features more to life because it forces you to think them more thoroughly through. Next, though, this is just a personal axe to grind. It's a bit of a personal preference, but man, do I wish more people fell onto my side of things, and I believe most readers agree. For the love of God, start using your character's senses to experience the world. This drives me crazy. It's like we only see the world, maybe we'll hear it, and that's about it. And I'm really annoyed by this because guess what? If you're walking around New York or a creepy swamp or whatever, you are all immersed in all these senses. And if I'm not getting any of those from your book, aside from some sights, some sounds, I'm going to notice it. And it's going to make me feel like your world does not actually exist as well as many others. Because it just feels like, oh, I guess there is no smells to think of or talk about. And it's such a small thing. You just need to put in a line about a smell or a feeling, a dampness in the air. Things along those lines add tremendous weight and value. If you want examples of authors who do this spectacularly, Stephen King, Joe Abercrombie, both of them, amazing at making sure to fully immerse the reader by taking the senses of the characters that the reader's sitting in the mind of and engaging all the senses to bring in the wider world. You can build the best, most well-realized world ever, but if you don't really get into that feel of it and all the different ways, hey, go to any sense and bring it in, that's fine. It's not going to feel as visceral as you may want it to. Now, if you don't really want that visceral appeal, you want that more stoic, oh, isn't it beautiful and grand? That's fine. It's not what the general trend is today, and it's not what a lot of people's preferences are, myself included, but I get it, you can go that route, but just know you are making that choice. Because if you want this gritty world on the Gentleman Bastards level, the reason it feels so immersive, the atmosphere bleeds from the page, it's because these authors take the time to add these small details where you and your brain will file away, oh, this is what it feels like to live in and experience this world by the actual means of the readers experiencing reality. And I know this sounds dumb, but I just know I come across so many authors who don't do this. And a great example, as I said, I'm gonna bring an example of someone who does not do this on either side of it, and it drove me nuts, is a book I recently really tore apart here on the channel, The Fifth Sorceress. There was some sensory stuff, all right, but there was no depth whatsoever. Every character our main cast came across just felt like this hollow shell that existed to regurgitate dialogue. And part of that is because there was nothing absolutely nothing in this world that was built to exist outside of serving the direct purpose of our narrative. And that drove me insane. On top of that, we did get some sensory stuff, but it was mostly the shallow sights, sounds. I think we got smells occasionally, but that's it. And I'm not saying every time you walk into a new environment, you have to go through and check off all these different senses. That'll be ridiculous. All you have to do is keep in mind, if they're going into a new environment, what's likely to stand out. Because every time I walk into a new person's apartment, I usually smell it. Sounds weird, but it's true. You can smell a person's place, and that's usually a good thing if they're pretty clean and kept it together, or if it's a bad thing, you better point it out, because oh my God, a bad smelling home is noticeable to the point where most people try and leave. So this has just been a little bit of a rant now. I deteriorated, sorry. I felt like I started structured and then I just kind of got into it too much, but that's my general advice. And I hope some people can take away from this some things that I've been doing and bring it into their own work, and maybe take some new angles and develop in ways they previously weren't. Are both of these features you're already doing, or is this kind of new to you and you're gonna go experiment? Let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.